So Kubernetes is essentially the fundamental premise behind Kubernetes is desired state management. Right? What is desired state management? You feed the cluster certain configurations, and it's up to the cluster to run that state in the Kubernetes cluster. Sorry, it's up to the Kubernetes control plane to run that state in the cluster. So now, what are these configurations that you want to feed the cluster, and how are you going to feed this configuration, and what essentially is the configuration that you are going to feed it? So in Kubernetes, there are two fundamental architecture components. One is the control plane, and one is the node. Control plane consists of API server, right? That's where you feed your configurations to, and then the control plane takes that configuration, validates it, authenticates it, and then it's going to run it on the nodes. Nodes are essentially your virtual machines without guest OS or anything, with the container runtime installed, and whatever the configuration that you provide, API server takes in it, validates it, and runs it on your worker nodes. So how do we give this configuration to the API server? So with Kubernetes, we speak to it by YAML or JSON files. We provide the configurations through YAML or JSON files, and we use something called as kubectl. It's a client tool to interact with the Kubernetes API server via HTTP API calls, and then we provide this configuration via this tool, and then Kubernetes takes on from there and running your public containers on Kubernetes cluster. So this is the entire diagram of a single node Kubernetes cluster here. So if you want to run a container, so right now you wrote your code, you containerized it, and you pushed it to your Docker registry to store that particular image. Now you want to deploy it on Kubernetes cluster. What do you do? So you first use your kubectl command, give your pod spec with the YAML or JSON file. That's a declarative way of providing the configuration to your API server, or you can use the kubectl commands of imperative way by providing like the image that you want to run. For example, anything like for example Nginx, you can just make kubectl run image Nginx, and that will talk to the API server. API server validates the incoming request, and then it proceeds to deploying on the worker nodes.
So, do you understand difference between declarative and imperative way?
Yeah. Let me know if you need more information on what it is.
Okay. I think. So, do you understand? You want us to explain it further?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, declarative way and imperative way, right? They are like how do you want to write? How do you want to write or process your code, right? So for example, in the declarative way, you come up with a predefined configurations, right? And then supply the entire config to the processor. So here your processor is your kubectl, right? So you process it, it reads through the file, analyzes it, and then does the action which you have asked it to take. Imperative way is you are manually trying to use the kubectl command and trying to fetch each and every operation at runtime. Right? So that is the difference between declarative and imperative way. So in standard practice, we use declarative way, right? Just to try out things, right? Try out features on your normal machine. It is always imperative.
So it's basically a shortcut for creating that.